You got to come back sometime when Danny Parkins is here, because as you talk about in that open, how when you see Chicago on the news, it's probably something bad. Danny did a whole "What About Chicago" radiothon trying to retake that phrase, because what about Chicago?
What about Chicago?
Chicago's awesome. That's what about Chicago.
What about Chicago? But we're on Chicago radio right now, and it's Chicago radio that breaks the Beatles. Right, so I don't care how old you are, how young you are, you can appreciate their art form. Some musician has jacked music from them, and it was my man Dick Biondi right there on Whacker and what's that, Wabash. He was working for WLS, and back in the day when the other radio stations would turn down their frequency, you could hear Chicago all the way to Buffalo. And so bro went overseas one day and he heard the Beatles, right? Because that's where they're from. He brought the album back, and just because he was a nighttime DJ, he didn't think anybody would hear it. So he plays the song. He breaks the Beatles, right? So give us our respect.
How about that? We're on the on 670, the old WMAQ frequency. We must ask questions, like the mindset of Chicago journalism. It's nice to be a part of that.
So when you were taking out DJ Moore and his family, and I know you've got a relationship with the Bears to get them steeped in the city in which they're going to ply their trade, on the video that they cut, we only saw, they played the hits, right? We saw the super touristy stuff, but that wasn't all you did.
Oh, no, absolutely. We took them to, I try to show people the entirety of Chicago best I can, right? It's a big city. You can't see it all in one tour, but I want you to see the neighborhoods, right? Not only do I want you to see the neighborhoods, I want you to see the things that come from the neighborhoods. So I took them to Pilgrim Baptist, which is home to gospel music. I took them to the Wabash YMCA, which is the place that helped create Black History Month for this country. But the building was donated by a cool Jewish cat by the name of Julius Rosenwald, who also gave us the Museum of Science and Industry. So I take him there, take him by the Chicago Union Stockyard Gate so he can fully understand why Carl Sandburg said we were hog butchers to the world, right? Take them to Chess Records so they could see the building that Etta James sung in. And also we for sure went by Soldier Field, so he understand where he's going to be playing, at least while they're playing in Soldier Field. So that type of immersive tour.
Man, that's got to be awesome for you to do. And I love that the Bears reached out to you and have started doing that. So who else have you taken on tours, and who might you still take on a tour?
It's been insanely crazy last year. So pretty much their entire rookie class, I took on a neighborhood tour and then took them around a little bit of some of the Chicago highlights, if you will. And I'm doing it for more sports teams too. I take in the Blackhawks upper brass, right, all the way up to Danny himself on neighborhood tours to teach them about North Lawndale and the West Side, so they know a little bit more about the cultural history and cultural aspects, good and bad, right? You know, not just the good stuff, but the truth about what's happening with Chicago. The Chicago White Sox Ace team, so that's their.
That's a great program.
Oh man, that program is awesome.
Actually, I was just talking with Brandon Johnson.
Oh, that's right.
Hit two of his kids are in the Ace program.
So I took a couple of his kids on the tour last year, and I'm going to take them again this year. And there's a place on 44th Street that's the Mabel Banks boarding home. And it's listed in the Negro Green Book, and it was one of the places that Negro League players had to stay in when they came to Chicago due to how our laws were set up and just the discrimination that they faced back in the day. And that home is still standing. To see the kids' faces when you point to that and say, hey, it's a strong possibility that Satchel Paige had to sleep there. Like, their minds blow.
Wow. So what's the currency for you? How do you decide what is worthy of your interest and thereby sharing it with people on the tour, because there's so much?
Oh man, you're very generous, because it certainly isn't about me. I try to,
but your curiosity has to drive their curiosity.
Yeah, then there's that, right? If I don't think it's cool, I'm probably not going to talk about it.
Right.
So that's very fair. Today I took a group of kids from Little Village High School through a tour of Little Village, right? So everybody crosses underneath the clock on 26th Street, but they don't know that the president of Mexico was in a visit here in Chicago in 1990. And he was so impressed with how much he felt like he was at home on 26th Street that on the spot, he ordered them to make that clock. And the president of Mexico had it shipped here and installed in 1991, right? So just teaching them about how that neighborhood was formerly Bohemian Czech. And we call Pilsen because that was the capital of the Czech back in the day, right? And so, they think of Pilsen as always being a Mexican neighborhood, but just teaching them about, right, with Cermak, because the Bohemian Antoine Cermak, right, who was the mayor. So their eyes light up. You teach them about Chicago common brick. Anytime you see that green fence of death around anything that we're getting ready to knock down, the only thing they're saving is the brick, because our Chicago common brick is the strongest brick in the city, and our city is peppered with it. So so it just depends on who's getting on the bus, what I teach them.
So
I'm fascinated by the ethnic evolution of urban neighborhoods.
Yes.
And what it says about immigration, what it says about the culture and community, and how people help themselves, and how where the movement goes. I look at South Shore, for example, and like my uncle grew up in South Shore. When like Marv Levy was there, and it was a huge Jewish population there, because they were the recent immigrants who were building themselves up and trying to build familial wealth. And I used to go visit family down there. And, you know, going back now, and especially going to that wonderful public golf course down there, you talk about a hidden gem. You talk about, I mean, there's one of the seventh hole, or fifth hole, it's like a Pebble Beach, the vista that you get out over the lake. That there are, and you know, when I've walked around there a little bit, and there are so many areas that have been great, and that are there where newer populations are working to reestablish some of this stuff.
Yeah, I love South Shore. Amazing. The place you mentioned, South Shore Cultural Center and Golf Course, is absolutely pristine. And it's one of those things that tells a complete Chicago story when we see a problem, want to do something about the problem, and solve the problem, because your uncle, your family were not allowed to play golf when it was a private country club there. No Jews, no blacks was literally on the sign. And all the way to 1970, that was the rule. And it wasn't the brothers, it was the Jewish community that made it very difficult for that golf course to continue to run. And instead of opening its doors, it closed up. And then the city was getting ready to knock the whole thing down. But it was also that community that was like, no, we're going to keep this and turn it into the cultural center. And now it's something that's shared for the entirety of the city. And that's the Chicago I like to promote on my channel, right? Like, the truth, that did happen. It was some discrimination there, but that's not the end of the story. We pushed through, and that's typically the Chicago story.
All right, so one more thing on the Jewish and African-American crossover, and not just because the two of us are here and with you, Dilla, but my friend, my bass player, John Paul, who I was mentioning, was on a tour with you the other day, and he said that you pointed out this Baptist temple. I think it's Stone Temple.
Yes.
Tell people the story. And where is this exactly, the Stone Temple?
You need to visit Stone Temple. It's in North Lawndale. It's on Douglas Boulevard. It's just a little bit west of Holman.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And so when you're traveling there, you'll be traveling west, and it'll be on the north side of the street. And so I'm gonna try to be fast. I know we got other stuff to do.
It was originally a synagogue,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. So after it was a second fire in 1874 that burned in Printers Row, what we call Printers Row today, and it sent the poor Jews to the west side, and it sent the brothers to Bronzeville. And in that place today that we call Stone Temple, it was formerly the first Romanian congregation. Romania used to be its own sovereignty. And so when it was, the Queen of Romania came to Chicago, went to that building, and took Sabbath, right, because she was Jewish. And then the pew that she sat in to enjoy the service was still there. So then when the neighborhood demographics switched, it went from the first Romanian Jewish congregation to Stone Temple Baptist Church. And when Dr. King lived here in 1965, 1966, that's the same pew he sat in order to preach at. And when you go over there and look at the building, because of the relationship with the synagogue, when they sold it to the Baptist church, there was no price gouging. They didn't rip the copper out. They didn't take the pews. It was just a friendly transaction between two religious institutions. To this day, every King holiday, the congregation had moved to Skokie. They come back, they pray together, they march together, and the city doesn't talk about it. It's an amazing thing.
See that the beautiful passing from one religion to another is exquisite.
I still think you're burying the lead about probably the most important African-American and Jewish connection in the history of Chicago. Come on now.
What's that?
That would be Harold Pierce and a guy named Gene Rosen.
Oh, that's a pretty good one. And Gene Rosen has grandkids that's still around, so they're going to particularly love this. But Mr. Rosen had a poultry farm, and he sold chicken, and Mr. Pierce was going through a divorce with his wife, Hilda, and so he was closing H&H Chicken and was going to open Harold's Chicken, but he wanted to play with the recipe, so Gene Rosen gave him a couple wings, some thighs to play with the recipe, and now we got Harold's Chicken. That's probably my third favorite Black and Jewish connection. My second one, would be Abe Sparrowstein and the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah, Saperstein, sure.
Saperstein, yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah,
His daughter, Eloise, Abe Saperstein's daughter, was an agent for years.
See, I always get a little hinky about these because I hope that our people were nice. You know what I mean?
And
not all of them
the other
were.
Chicago connection, her prize client was Alfrederick Hughes out of Loyola.
Alfrederick the Great.
When Alfrederick was a first round pick, and like her big one of the big clients of hers was that relationship. I've spoken with her about it. Yeah, she was great.
I guess that would be Booker T.
That's number 2.
Yeah, that's number 2, and then Julius Rosenwald and his relationship with like Ida B. Wells and then Booker T. Washington will be my number 1 of all time. Julius Rosenwald's probably my second favorite Chicagoan to ever draw oxygen, and my parents were born here, right? So that's saying something. He was living in Kenwood when they had a restrictive racial covenant and African Americans wasn't allowed to live there. So he invited Booker T. Washington to his house. So the neighbors come outside and they're all in the uproar. He was the most humblest guy in the world, but he was the CEO and president of Sears Roebuck and Company when it was Sears Roebuck and Company. And so he was a gazillionaire. He told his neighbors that if you guys don't go in the house, I'm going to buy all your houses and fill them with black folks. And they all went back in the house, right? He was that type of person. But just to end on his proper legacy, if you go to the museum campus, it's the John G. Shedd Aquarium, named for John G. Shedd, who took over for Marshall Field. Next door to that is the Field Museum of Natural History, named for Marshall Field. Further down is the first planetarium in the Western Hemisphere. It's for the Adler Planetarium for Max Adler, right? He also was a Sears guy. But then you go to the south side, it's the Museum of Science and Industry, no name. But Julius Rosenwald dropped $10 million to save that building. Wow. He forbade them from putting his name on it. That wasn't the type of guy he was.
Wow.
In what neighborhood did you grow up?
Auburn Gresham, right near St. Sabina Church.
Okay.
Yep.
So Shermann Dilla Thomas is _Dilla on Twitter, describes himself as a husband, father, Chicago historian. It's funny because like people are texting in Dilla and they're saying he should write a book, but like a book is something you could do, but you are actively sharing this history and passing this on with human interaction, like that group of kids today and these new Chicago Bears. I mean, this is a more vibrant and active version of sharing this stuff than writing a book. Isn't it?
I think so. And I plan on doing some of that too, but I'm on all the social media platforms and that's why I'm doing it, right? What would take you, a day and a half to read, to catch a story, I'm hoping to give to you in a couple of minutes in the video.
Yeah.
And it's quicker to digest, but also I try to leave room in whatever subject matter to make you want to go get a book to learn more, to put us back in the books anyway. But I'm on all social media platforms, the number 6 FIGGA_DILLA. And our website is ChicagoMahogany.com. We book neighborhood tours. We'll show you the whole city. I'm not showing you downtown. I'll pick you up downtown, but I'm not touring downtown.
See, and he will skew the tour to fit either the ethnicity, if desired, or however a group probably wants to do it. By the way, you're listening to Sports Radio 670 The Score, WSCR HD Chicago, WBMX HD2 Chicago, an Odyssey station. Boog Shambi is going to join us in about 10 minutes. So my whole life I heard Spiegel, Matt Spiegel. Oh, like the catalog. Where's the Spiegel catalog? It's over there on the southwest side.
Yeah,
right?
It's on 35th Street, right in between, let's call it, oh man, that'd be like Racine and Haugh in between right there. But let me tell you a cool thing about Spiegel.
Please.
Spiegel was a guard for the Douglas Confederate prison camp. So Chicago had a Confederate prison camp on the south side during Civil War, and Mr. Spiegel was a guard. So when the Civil War was over, the government ain't give nobody nothing. The Union or the Confederates just like, it's over, everybody go home. And he couldn't afford to get back to where he was, so he set up a little stand to sell goods to make money to go home. And he decided to stay and created the Spiegel Catalog Company, right?
I never knew that.
I didn't know that.
There it is.
We used to get the catalog, and
of course.
I never knew that.
It was a rival of Sears Roebuck at the time.
We had Lee Bay, the architectural critic, on the show when Lawrence and I talked to him. And I'd just be curious, especially with the way the weather has been. I know it's about to turn, and I know things are going to get weird with street closures and traffic, but what are your favorite unknown summer spaces of just a special place to go if somebody just wants to sit or read a book or have a cup of coffee? Where would you go just to spend a little time?
Now I want to see people in my spots that I go when I want to spend a little time.
It's like fishing. You don't have to give away the great spots.
You know,
right?
I can't even think of the secondhand ones on the spot right now, so I got to give the great ones. One of my favorite ones, though, is on the west side of Benito Juarez High School. Directly west to it, it's an open pavilion. You get a great view of downtown while you're sitting there. You can feed the pigeons, but you're surrounded by sculptures that describe the history of Mexico through its indigenous leaders.
Wow.
Second one will be Auburn Park, which is on the south side, is right off of maybe 78th and Vincennes. So once you turn west off of Vincennes, all of that used to be the original swampland of Chicago. When they built it out, they drained everything but the lagoon, and then they left the lagoon. So when you sit around that lagoon, you're looking at the old 1880s Chicago swamp water. And the houses built around it are also 1880s. So that's a place I love. We're not too far from the Lurie Cancer Survivor Garden, which is directly across the street from the Pew. It has the two big columns that we saved from a building that we knocked down when we didn't care about preservation in our city. But anyway, in between those, it's north of Maggie Daley Park. That's super duper quiet. I love that spot. And then I guess the last one I will give up. Let's see. There is Montgomery Ward Park, right?
North Branch of the river?
North Branch of the river.
Yep.
Super duper chill. It's like it's west of Orleans, you know, when you're going up Orleans, and then you can get on the expressway or not, right? Go that one block north.
Yeah, dog walkers back there.
That's a great spot.
Oh, my God, it's super chill.
You're right. On some of the architectural boat tours, you see it.
You'll see
That's
it.
how I know it.
Do you ever go to the top of the rise at Palmisano Park for a sunset? It's just on the south. Oh, dude.
Yeah, Burns, you trying to educate Dilla.
I'm just asking.
I need it.
I'm just asking. I'm surprised that that isn't on your list. 'Cause that is amazing.
So cool of you to come in studio, man. Thank you.
Well, anytime.
Yeah, no, let's definitely do it again. Would love to. That is Shermann Dilla Thomas. Find him on your social platforms. And ChicagoMahogany.com is the website. Book yourself a tour. That was awesome.